Muchísimas gracias a mi amigo, Kenneth McClintock, the Senate President. And let me tell you, we already have two of my primos who fell in love de mujeres de Puerto Rico y se quedaron. La Isla de Encanto, and you're right, Kenneth, when I go there, it's family. The only thing is that when I go with my mom, she never wants to come back. She stays more weeks, and thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. To Steve Banta and the great folks at Verizon. Steve, we're changing your name. This is a Latino Leaders Luncheon. Yeah, you're Esteban Banta. Thank you so much for the support that you've given this luncheon series. And to my good friend Frank Ross de Coca-Cola, thank you so much. I have never met anyone who speaks Español así. And then when he starts speaking English, he's just a good old boy. Georgia. You know what we do in San Antonio, because we're a truly bicultural city and we have that Latino strong Mexican history, and yet we're part of the South and part of the Southwest, so we just say, pues, bienvenidos, y'all. Now that is singular, right, Frank? Because if we meant plural, it would be all y'all. Thank you so much. It's great to see old friends here. Or not say old friends, how about long-standing friends and lifelong friends? Muchísimas gracias. Mickey, thank you so much. It's been said so many times before, you are beloved by many people. The only other Mickey that's more beloved is a small little mouse with big ears. Everybody loves Mickey. Thank you for what you do to continue to bring us together and to bridge so many issues with Latinos and non-Latinos. You are a true American. Thank you, Mickey. My good friend here, Helen Sotonags, befriended me when I was an itty-bitty baby legislator in 1991, and I am indeed honored and humbled that she would come. She's also one of the great folks at Verizon, that she would make the trek from Texas, and I am indeed honored and humbled to join the ranks of the Latino leaders who have spoken at this luncheon series. Certainly our Attorney General and Senator Menendez and the Mayor of Los Angeles, and I'm just a little overwhelmed to be addressing a group of so powerful, motivated, compassionate, and can-do Latinos in our nation's capital. I am so honored and privileged to have been selected by my colleagues, first at the National Hispanic Conference of State Legislators, to be an officer and lead that group, and certainly that network of more than 350 Latino state legislators across the country. And muchísimas gracias, Liz Burgos, for being here today. And then to be able to be selected by my peers as president-elect of NCSL and opening up that whole new world. I don't know what is more preponderous, that you'd have a Latino or actually the first Texan. I don't know if Bill Pound, thank you for being here as Executive Director of NCSL. And when Mickey asked me to share a few comments, I have to tell you that we're supposed to share a little bit about ourselves and our history. And my family thinks I'm a little weird to, well, anybody who has 6 kids in 9 years would definitely fall under that category. But I'm actually weird because I'm probably one of the few people that carry around their Constitution, because you never know when you might need it. And I say this because there are 2 things in this that I love. And if you ever feel as Latinos somehow on the margins of discussions, take out that Constitution, and in the preamble it says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." And then I take the very, very back sentence of the Declaration of Independence. And it says, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. Mis amigos, that's what we do. And if you think about it, what is more important than something sacred? A mutual pledge to each other. In Spanish, si algo es sagrado, then no one can take that away. Es sagrado, un honor sagrado that we owe to each other. And so, especially at these times in our country, and considering all of the issues that are before us as Latinos, but as Americans, we know that we must play a critical role in our national debate, particularly now as we try to embark on a rational, comprehensive immigration reform that secures our borders and yet eliminates the inequities in the current system. My friends, you and I have to be a part of that dialogue. Es sagrado, un honor that we have to do. And yet we know that I can only stand here before you and your other legislators and the other congressmen that are here today, and my congressman that was here today, Charlie Gonzalez, because of those trailblazers that came before. They didn't just knock at the door, they kicked it open so that we could be here. And they didn't do it alone. I'm the daughter of a Korean War veteran. And because we know of that sacred honor, let me tell you a little bit about the Latinos who have served. We have over 600,000 veterans right now of Mexican descent, including 39 Medal of Honor recipients que son Latinos. We have 1.1 million Latino veterans. And since 2001, we make up over 10% of our armed forces. If you think about it, we make up almost 20% of the infantry, the gun crews, and the seamanship right now, the men and women who are in uniform. And so let us not forget that sacred honor. Will our veterans please stand so that we can give you our thanks? Por favor, de pie. Our veterans, muchísimas gracias. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I grew up in San Antonio, and family coming from, I'm the oldest. I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers, and I grew up in a very wonderful family on San Antonio's west side, very close to Enrique Cortez's family, which has the wonderful restaurant La Margarita in Mi Tierra. It wasn't El Mercado back then, it was Produce Row. And our grandfathers, Don Pedro Cortés, Don Daniel San Miguel, were best friends. My grandfather era boticario. And so the role model that I had was of my grandfather in that botica guadalupana. And the smells were wonderful. You know, it was a time when things were compounded. We didn't know it, but we were way ahead of our time in herbal medicine. Now everything is natural products. They just didn't know that when we got sick, era un tecito. You know, my grandpa used to make a wonderful cough medicine. It was called matatos. And it was just as good as the pomada that I made 20 years later called matasisote. Kill fungus. But I grew up in that atmosphere, and I always knew that I wanted to be a pharmacist. And I had parents that said, Mijita, you can be whatever you want to be. Yes, 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 you can be whatever you want to be. I wanted to be a pharmacist because even at the age of 6, I wanted people to look at me like they looked at my grandpa. He was a person of respect. They came to him because of his knowledge. And I knew that I wanted to be a person of knowledge. And we have to continue to strive in our young people that they can be a person of knowledge and of respect. But I also knew, como mujercita, when my father would introduce me or my mother, the first thing saying, "This is my daughter, Leticia. Ay, qué bonita la muchachita. Oh, what a pretty little girl." And the first thing out of my dad's mouth is she's the smartest girl in her class. Always. The power of a parent. She's the smartest girl in her class. Well, I wasn't. I wasn't. But because my father said so, it must be true. Because somebody whom I loved said so. Said I was. Guess what? I studied spelling. I studied because I thought I could be. And I was very lucky that I was pretty adept at math and science that enabled me to become a pharmacist. But that type of family structures that I was loved and nurtured, and I went to the best public schools, and I got to go to great universities on scholarship, yes. And knowing that in some way that I would be able to be like my grandfather. And so we need those role models. But I was in pharmacy school then in Houston, and I had a great time. Those of you who were in college campuses in the late 60s, early 70s know what I'm talking about. You all have gray hair now. And I was in a pharmacy math class, and part of the class I had a professor who called us up and we would do problems on the board. Okay, this is before calculators. I was great at a slide rule. You can see them in museums. I see all these young people saying, "¿Qué slide rule?" I was wonderful at that. But anyway, she called me up, and I got the problem wrong in front of the whole class. And I was embarrassed. And like many humans who find themselves in error, they make light of it. And so I made a little remark. And I'll never forget what she told me. She said, "Miss San Miguel, just because you're white for a Mexican doesn't mean you can make mistakes like that." I was in total awe and shock. I couldn't believe that she had said something like that to me in front of my classmates. And I was hurt. And I wanted an apology. Class ended soon after, and I went up to her and I told the professor, I said, "What you said was absolutely wrong. I was unprepared for this class. But it has nothing to do with me being of Mexican descent. Truth of the matter was I was learning how to tap a keg the night before." True story. I want you young people to understand that during Vietnam, the age of legal alcohol consumption was 18. Okay? So. Anyway, I couldn't understand, so I told her, "I want an apology. And I want you to make this apology in front of class tomorrow." And she told me, "You make me sick." I said, "I make you sick?" I said, "Do you realize what you have just said to me?" And she says, "You think you're here for you?" She says, "How many girls are in this class?" There was 8 out of 65. She says, "How many Mexicans are here?" There were 3 of us. She says, "You've got so much potential, and you are having a good time. You think you're here for you." And she walked out. Very painful, because she was right. I never thought until that point that what I did as Leticia San Miguel, hija del dueño de la botica guadalupana, reflected on mis hermanas. I never thought that it was my duty to be so good so they'd let other women in. And I never thought about myself as being doubly good so they'd let more raza in. I never thought about myself in the same way. It's not about me. My friends, it's not about you. It's about us. As it turned out, Professor Rouse did apologize the next class, and we have become, until her death, very good friends. And maybe for people like me who weren't the first generation to break down those doors, we need to be reminded. Now, I was reminded in a way that slapped me and assaulted what I thought. But she got her point across. I went on and finished pharmacy school at the University of Texas, got married, and proceeded to work in La Botica. And my dream was to own my own pharmacy, and I did. In between, in the 1980s, I had 6 children. And that pharmacy provided me with the opportunity to take my babies to work, something that most women can't do unless you own the joint, and I did. And so I got to be with my babies. And as I saw what the disease burden was for people in my community, I began to think, who makes these laws? Who makes this policy? You see, in 1990 in Texas, we had a comprehensive policy that made sure that every cow was going to be vaccinated, and we had a registry. We didn't have a similar policy for children. But in an agricultural, industrial, manufacturing economy, cows are money. And so it was a product of our economy. My friends, in a social sector, service sector economy, my little oil wells are those little chicanitos in 3rd grade. And so we must invest in immunizations and an immunization registry. And so I thought, I'm going to put my name in. They don't know what they're doing. Who's making education policy? Who's making this? I got angry. I had never held office, and I wasn't supposed to win, but I did. And I've loved it ever since. I love making laws and policy at the state level. And we all are leaders. I may be a leader in my community, but everyone in my community and Latinos are leaders. We are all public servants. We are all servant leaders in our own capacities. I've loved being engaged in the legislature and that institution. But if you sit here today and you're involved in education, then you are a servant leader. If you're involved in healthcare, you're a servant leader. Many decisions are made in boardrooms. Many decisions are made at the state legislative level and at our precious capital, very close to here. But more decisions that affect Latinos are made at the supper table. And that's where you and I need to be those servant leaders, to affect family life. I'm always reminded of my grandmother, 2 grandmas, one born in Guadalajara and the other in Musquis, Coahuila, and crossing that border every day. And whenever we get off track, whenever something would go wrong, Abuelita would say, checkpoint, checkpoint, because there were 4 questions that Border Patrol asked her. And if you ever get off track as an individual in your organization, whether it's a community-based organization, a governmental institution, think about the checkpoint and the questions. First question they ask, ¿Quién es? Who are you? Who are we? Who are we as Latinos? What do we represent? Second question, ¿Qué traes? What do you have? Right? I think they were worried about vegetables and fruits and other stuff. But ¿Qué traes? What qualities, what skill sets do you possess that make you an asset to your family, to your community, to your employer? ¿Qué traes? Third question, ¿A dónde vas? Where are you going? And we know where we're going. The fourth question is probably the most difficult one that they'd ask, Abuela. ¿Qué vas a hacer cuando llegues ahí? What are you going to do when you get there? That's the question you and I as Latinos still have to ask. And we have to answer with rational thought and debate. What are we going to do when we get there? Because ya llegamos. We are here. Be a leader. I have been given a marvelous opportunity but I have been given every opportunity. I am in awe and wonder of that single mom with 2 kids who got pregnant and got her GED, and she's at the community college and she's working and she has this dream. That's the leader. That's the person that didn't have it easy like I did. Or the young man who battles those demons of addiction and yet knows that he's got to finish his education. The small business owner just barely making it. Those people are courageous. They're the ones that haven't had the opportunity. I'm lucky. I should be here. I had parents who loved me in best schools, and I've been given a great opportunity. And you all have your own stories, las historias. Let's share them with our young people. And if we ever get off balance, if you ever question what is our purpose, checkpoint. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you. Thank you.
That's exactly what we wanted. We're going to make a presentation.